Good evening, everybody. Breaking tonight, Republicans making progress in their quest for tax reform. Senate Republicans unveil their tax plan as the House Ways and Means Committee advanced their tax legislation. The two measures, however, appear far apart. The House Ways and Means Committee, its chairman Kevin Brady, our special guest here tonight. Also tonight, President Trump and his Chinese counterpart pledging to work together to end the North Korean nuclear threat. President Trump in Beijing saying North Korea's threats will never be realized. We'll discuss all of it with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. And outrageous comments from President Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Kirstjen Nielsen says Americans owe it to illegal immigrant children to find a permanent solution to DACA. That's right, advocating amnesty and saying it's our responsibility. Our top story tonight, the battle over tax cuts. Senate Republicans today unveiling their tax plan. Legislation very different from the House version that passed out of committee earlier today. Now the hard work begins, reconciling the measures, if indeed they are passed by both houses of Congress. Fox News Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel with our report.
The amendment is agreed to.
Tax reform has taken a critical step in the House, passing the Ways and Means Committee 24-16. The vote coming after Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady offered a 29-page amendment to fine-tune the House plan.
We know we have more work yet to be done, but this is a historic step, and we look forward to sending this bill to the House and ultimately to the President's desk this year.
On the other side of the Capitol, Finance Chairman Orrin Hatch rolled out a Senate Republican tax reform plan. The House would cut to 4 brackets. The Senate maintains 7 brackets. The House would partially repeal state and local deductions, still allowing up to $10,000 for property taxes, while the Senate would totally scrap those deductions. Both the House and Senate would reduce the corporate rate to 20%, but the Senate would do it after a 1-year delay. The House would allow for mortgage deduction up to $500,000, while the Senate would permit mortgage deductions up to $1 million. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer is trying to convince Republicans from high-tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California to run from the House bill.
Senate Republicans are telling House Republicans there'll be no compromise on state and local deductibility. It's full repeal or bust.
House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi hammered the GOP for a lack of transparency.
Why don't we do it where there's the least opportunity for people to review it? Let's do it very fast, very fast. Speed of light in the dark of night and back rooms without even their own members.
Pelosi has said tax reform could cost the GOP the majority. Speaker Paul Ryan told reporters Republicans will not lose the House on fixing the tax code.
This is about fulfilling our promises to the American people. I fundamentally believe when we do this, make good on our word, make good on our promise, make people's lives better, we're going to be just fine politically.
House GOP sources say they feel pretty good about where they are in terms of support for their tax proposal. They recognize they will likely lose some, but not all, high-tax state Republicans by reducing the state and local deduction. Lou?
Mike, thank you very much. Mike Emanuel. The House Ways and Means Committee advancing their tax bill, sending it to the Rules Committee next. After that, the full House will vote on the tax legislation probably late next week, in line with its promise to pass its version of the legislation before the Thanksgiving holiday. And that is thanks in large measure to the hard work and long hours of the committee our first guest leads. He is the powerful chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Kevin Brady. His committee spent 4 days marking up the legislation to move the bill ahead. Mr. Chairman, let me start by saying congratulations. You did what seemed impossible just a matter of weeks ago. How do you feel about it before we get to how everybody else feels about it?
Yeah, that's right. First, thank you. Look, this is a big day for the American people. It's a big day for the president as well. Everyone, skeptics, no one believed you'd see this day. It's been 31 years since the Ways and Means Committee has acted to fix this broken tax code. We did. It's approved, now goes on to the House. And so this is, again, it's a big win for the people who are just sick of the status quo and all the special loopholes and all the high tax rate and our jobs still leaving the country. And from that standpoint, I'm really pleased for the American people.
And at the same time, you're getting a lot of criticism from folks who say that it doesn't go far enough in cutting for the middle class, that it doesn't go, in fact, far enough because of the suggestion of a deferred tax for business, which has been a mainstay of the president's agenda through the campaign and as president. What do you do about
Lou, no, that's a great point. So we are tax rates for our local businesses, whether they're a small business or a corporation, begin immediately after the bill is signed. In fact, the amendment today, the final one I offered, actually creates a new low tax rate for those small Main Street businesses of up to $75,000. That's that Main Street deli
9%.
or donut shop or attorney. So yes.
Yeah, I think most people were very surprised by that and delighted, as you say, because small business in this country, it gets lost there in Washington, I know, from time to time. But small business are the job creators. They are the stuff of which innovation is made, the entrepreneurial energy that drives the country. You're recognizing that in this bill, and I think a lot of people have got to be thrilled. I know even the National Federation of Independent Business is now on board.
Yeah, we work very closely with them. Look, they have one goal is deliver that tax relief for that Main Street business, and we're thrilled to partner with them to make this big change.
Well, there's some big changes going on the other side of the hill, as you well know. The Senate has come up with a seven bracket proposal. They've deferred corporate taxes, tax cuts. Not taxes. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. This is a real collision of two different views of what tax reform really means.
So I've been doing this for a while, and I don't think so. Look, there are some differences, but there is so much more we have in common, and I think that's because we sat down together with President Trump this year, spent months working toward the same target, put it up on the wall. The House is moving and acting. The Senate's bill drives toward that same target. And yes, while there may be some differences, we are shooting at the same approach. And so I think it's healthy. I don't see anything that we can't work to hit the target that President Trump and us together put for the American people.
And after this legislation, let's assume it's passed by the House and the Senate. Conference gets to be real interesting. Who do you want to declare as the winner tonight? Will it be the House version or the Senate version?
Okay, so you walked into that. The winner's the American people, because for 3 decades, this mess of a tax code. Can you imagine 9 out of 10 people actually being able to file their taxes using a postcard-style system, and our local businesses no longer saddled with the highest taxes almost in the world, able to compete and win anywhere in the world, including on Main Street. Boy, that is a game changer, I think, for the American people. They've been waiting too long.
Yeah, well, let's hope that you and the Senate get it right, and the president is eager to sign it.
Yes, sir.
Let's see what happens.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Lou.
it, Congressman. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Chairman Kevin Brady. We're coming right back. A lot more to cover here tonight. A busy day in Washington, even busier in some quarters of Asia. We'll tell you all about that as well. Stay with us. So who does President Trump blame for decades of trade deficits with China? The president rightly blames his predecessors for that trade imbalance.
I do blame past administrations for allowing this out-of-control trade deficit to take place and to grow.
We take up the president's efforts to fix the foreign policy mess he inherited with Dr. Sebastian Gorka here next. And Senate Republicans defy President Trump. Delaying the corporate tax cut will have more on the fallout from Capitol Hill. We'll be right back. President Trump continues on his Asian diplomatic tour today in Beijing, urging China to constrain North Korea.
China can fix this problem easily and quickly, and I am calling on China and your great president to hopefully work on it very hard. I know one thing about your president. If he works on it hard, it will happen. There's no doubt about it. They know.
And President Trump shifted the blame for our trade deficit with China.
Trade between China and the United States has not been, over the last many, many years, a very fair one for us. I don't blame China. Who can blame a country for being able to take advantage of another country for the benefit of its citizens? I give China great credit. But in actuality, I do blame past administrations.
Past administrations, past presidents for the largest trade deficit among all of our trading partners. Joining us tonight, former Deputy Assistant Strategist to President Trump, author of the New York Times bestseller Defeating Jihad, now Fox News national security strategist and contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Great to have you with us. Let's start with that wonderful moment where the president acknowledges that he doesn't blame China, but rather the, if you will, the fools who made it so. That is, who accepted 40-plus years of trade deficits, specifically with China, who permitted those deficits to rise to record and the largest levels amongst any of our trading partners.
Absolutely, Lou. Great to be back. The president has this kind of supernatural instinctual capacity to read the audience and to couch things in terms that they understand. When I was with him in Youngstown, Ohio, in the Steel Valley, he spoke in one way that was resonant with that audience. When he's in front of Congress, it's very different. And today, he spoke in terms that a Chinese audience would understand. He spoke in the words of Sun Tzu, like an Asian strategist. He said, look, I don't blame you for playing us for fools to your own benefit, because of course you do that for your own national interests. But it's clear where the strategic blame is to be laid upon naive policies of past presidential administrations, and also, Lou, the private sector. When we have massive businesses, Google included and many others, that simply look at market share, look at China as a market, right, and don't think about the ramifications, that's why we are where we are today.
Well, let's turn to the fact that it may be somewhat exaggerated because of the circumstance of the trade mission that accompanies this president in China, but the two countries announcing $250 billion in trade deals. That is, even if it's enlarged a little because of the political dimensions of the president's critical trip, it's a massively impressive day in trade.
Absolutely. I told people who'd voted for Trump last year, people who supporters, even if you're really for him, you have no idea how successful he's going to be diplomatically, not just in terms of business. And he's proving it. Lou, it's hard to choose right now in the last 9 months which record is more impressive. What he's done domestically, look at the stock market, look at unemployment, look at new jobs, or whether it's what he's already achieved in this scant few months in terms of international relations, whether it's defeating ISIS, reinvigorating NATO, reassuring our Asian allies. It feels as if we're in a second term, doesn't it?
It feels to me like we have a Trump presidency, and it's the one that millions of us envisioned when he was running for the office he now holds. Thank you, God. Trump and Putin, do you think they'll meet?
I hope so. Because there needs to be a face-to-face meeting to make sure that that man Putin also understands what the president is doing, and that this isn't President Obama. This is a very different president. He's a serious man. He's a pragmatist and a patriot. And Putin needs to understand, just as everybody else, North Korea included, China included, you don't mess with the United States under the command of President Donald J. Trump.
And as you say, a pragmatist, but at the same time, the wall is slow going and people are getting restive. His supporters. We have Kristen Nielsen, the president's choice to lead DHS today, saying it's Americans' fault and that we're to blame for children here, brought here illegally by their illegal immigrant parents. This has created a firestorm, as you well know. Your thoughts about that?
I'm a little disturbed, to say the least, with regards to this individual. She has a track record before coming into government of being pro-open borders. This is not who Secretary Kelly was. It's not who the president is. And there is one thing, Lou, that is non-negotiable when it comes to this 8-year presidency, and that is the building of the wall. And Ms. Nielsen needs to get on message, otherwise she will not be representing the president's intent.
What does it say to you that a nominee for that high office and critically important part of our national security team responsible for our borders would make such a remark, urging amnesty and saying the American people are the ones who are to blame for the plight of those illegal immigrant children who were brought here by their illegal immigrant parents?
Well, clearly, if this is what she believes, she's fallen victim to the narrative of the left. I mean, this is what Hillary Clinton was saying in private, high-tag speeches she was giving to bankers about the need for having no borders in the Western Hemisphere. Miss Nielsen needs to understand that it's not Hillary who's president.
And one other question, if I may, your thoughts right now as to what we're going to see come of 2 tax bills. Is this a process that's going to lead to the Trump agenda's tax cuts, or something quite different?
I think it's comparable to the Gipper's saying. So what did Ronald Reagan say? I'll take 70% of the loaf and I'll come back for the other 30% later. It's not going to be perfect right now, but this is a marker that has to be laid down. We have to get tax reform started.
Dr. Sebastian Gorka, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
And be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question, do you believe the Republican Party deserves to keep its majorities in the House and the Senate? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you because there is some extensive grumbling today after those 2 quite different versions of tax cuts emerged from the Senate and the House. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Breaking news this evening that could have major implications for the balance of power in the Senate. Alabama Republican candidate Roy Moore denying allegations that he had sexual contact with a 14-year-old girl nearly 40 years ago, as reported by the Washington Post. Moore calling that report baseless and defamatory. On Wall Street, stocks closing lower, the Dow falling 101 points, the S&P down 10, the Nasdaq down 37. Volume on the big board, 3.7 billion shares. And Equifax earnings taking a big hit from the company's massive cyber attack. Shares down in after hours. The company also reporting it's received subpoenas from the SEC and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Georgia over employee stock sales just before the breach was disclosed to the public. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next here, a California group doesn't want to just protest our national anthem, it wants to get rid of it altogether. We'll have a full report on a nation dealing with, coming to terms with, the madness of the left. We'll be right back. The NAACP, the California chapter of the NAACP, taking aim at the national anthem. They want to get rid of it altogether. They claim the song is racist and anti-black. The group is pushing state lawmakers to support their campaign to remove the Star-Spangled Banner as our national anthem, at least in the state of California. Fox News national correspondent William LaJeunesse with our report.
Written in 1814, President Woodrow Wilson recognized the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem in 1916, and Congress later affirmed it. Though heard all the time, the song itself rarely drew much attention until NFL players began kneeling during the anthem as a way to protest social injustice. That's when the California NAACP took a closer look at the words.
It's racist. It doesn't represent our community. It's anti-black people. The real intention got overlooked, and it's become something that's dividing us. And I'm looking for a way to bring us back together.
Francis Scott Key wrote the lyrics as he watched British warships bomb Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Here are the words in the rarely sung third stanza the NAACP finds offensive. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave.
We don't use that third bar. We don't readily hear it, so why not just take it out? If it's offensive to some people and it's hurtful, then I say take it out.
Historians, however, strongly disagree about the context of those lyrics. Here's why. Hireling and slave refer to black slaves liberated by the British, some of whom fought against the states. To Key, they were mercenaries and traitors. But that doesn't mean the song celebrates slavery, say most historians. The British also manipulated blacks to fight with the unfulfilled promise of freedom. And lyrics elsewhere refer to blacks and whites alike as free men fighting for the states.
It's a song. Keep it original. It's like messing with somebody's Picasso art because you didn't like how her nose was too big.
Critics say the group is creating a controversy where none exists. The NAACP is now hoping a member of Congress will sponsor their bill to kill or change the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem. Lou?
William, thank you very much. William Lajeunesse from California. We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. Former chief strategist for President Trump, Steve Bannon, calling for the resignation of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
What he ought to do is offer to resign as soon as taxes are done. We can't do it in the middle of taxes because I got to tell you, there needs to be a sense of urgency in the Senate.
We take up the intransigence of the GOP leaders on Capitol Hill, who to this point refuse to support the president's agenda. Charlie Hurt, Vince Colonnese join me here next. And for this fearless daredevil, leaping off a big old mountain in Italy just isn't thrilling enough. We'll show you how he adds a little zest to his day and to his stunt at the next level. Stay with us. We'll be right back with a video and much, much more. The chairman of the House Judiciary Committee has become the latest establishment Republican lawmaker to say they won't run for re-election. Congressman Bob Goodlatte of Virginia says he will retire at the end of his term. Goodlatte joins 18 other incumbent Republicans in the House and Senate who've decided to exit their current positions. And you can't make this up. First, a juror in the Menendez corruption trial asked the judge, "What is a senator?" Then the jury requested to leave an hour early in their deliberations in order to avoid traffic jams in Newark, New Jersey. Now a dismissed juror is speaking out, telling reporters she expects a hung jury. She says that if she had stayed on that jury, Senator Menendez would have been not guilty on every single charge. The juror spoke out after she was dismissed and replaced by an alternate because she had a vacation that she had to begin. She told the judge about it. She says, when she was chosen for the jury in August, I'm thinking that the senator may be regretting her vacation. Joining me now, Washington Times opinion editor, Fox Business contributor Charlie Hurt, editorial director at the Daily Caller, Vince Colonnese, and good to have you both here. Let me start, Vince, with you. And that is, the Republican Party is putting out two versions of a tax reform plan, neither of which comport to the vision of one Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. What are we to make of it?
We're to make of it that the vision of the president, which is to get the economy moving with cutting taxes for businesses and not in any way hurting the American middle class with a tax increase, seems to be straying away from the point here, that you have both the Senate and the House pursuing pieces of legislation in order to make it fit through the Senate's arduous and weird manipulative budget rules. I think the big issue here is, remember, what options does Senator Mitch McConnell have available to him? He can actually go nuclear here if he wanted to, but he's decided not to. He's been under pressure from the president for some time, get rid of the legislative filibuster, but he's decided not to, which is why we're left with a strange maneuver, a budget maneuver, to force through a tax bill that's going to, in the end, hurt the very people that put President Trump in office, potentially.
Charlie, your thoughts on it? I mean, it seems almost, these, in some ways, particularly the Senate legislation, seems to be the product of true, consternation and turmoil within at least the minds of the Senate about whether or not to ever do anything that might even appear to be following the Trump vision and the Trump agenda.
Yeah. Well, you know, my greatest hope from the moment that Donald Trump arrived on the political scene was that Republicans would, maybe they didn't agree with him about everything, but maybe possibly they might learn something from him. They might learn how he sells things, learn how he campaigns, learn something from this guy, because he's got a lot to offer. After all, he beat 18 of them in the primary and then went on to beat the most powerful political figure in the last 25 years in a general election. There's a lot to learn from this guy. And I'm afraid that Republicans in Congress are not learning any of those lessons. Donald Trump, you keep it simple. You simplify the tax code, you lower taxes for everyone. And what we're seeing here is it's getting more and more complicated, more and more complex. It's not simple. Nobody has any idea what is going on here or what this is going to do. But everybody's pretty sure that there are going to be at least some tax hikes in it. That's not the Republican way, and they're going to ruin their brand if they don't wake up and simplify this thing and cut taxes and move on.
And their intention, obviously, would, at least inferentially, we assume, is to hurt President Trump in some way. It's not happening. The national media is taking care of that chore as they viciously and unrelentingly attack him. Let's turn to China, where, Vince, the president actually said, I don't blame China for the runaway trade deficits of the United States, because our presidents have effectively, these are my words, not his, I'm going to just make it a little more succinct, have been damn fools over the course of decades in which they've allowed the Chinese to run up trillions of dollars in trade surpluses.
This is the same case we saw him make at the UN, which is that you, as world leaders, represent the interests of your countries. It's always your country first. And you saw it today. He goes to China and he says, yeah, if I was in your position, basically, I would do the same thing. I would take advantage of the lax enforcement and of this trade and create a trade deficit for the United States, because that's to the advantage of the Chinese government. And now he's, by suggestion here, by implication, he wants to reverse that. I think what you've seen is that both he and President Xi have been very cordial to one another. China rolled out the red carpet in a way that they never did for President Obama.
Or any other president, Vince. I mean,
that's right.
That was unprecedented.
And behind closed doors, the White House is saying that President Obama is being forceful in these negotiations with President Xi because he sees an imbalance in our trade that needs to be corrected.
Roy Moore, Charlie, Roy Moore. The Washington Post has found 4 women who were willing to go to appear under a headline charging him with behavior unbecoming, at the very least, and in one instance, wrongful behavior toward a young lady. What do you make of it? A man who's 70 years old, has been in the public eye forever, and suddenly the Post found these folks.
I'm always very skeptical of any of these stories like this in a campaign season, but I have to say that the story that woman, the main woman who was named in describing what happened to her, as she said when she was 14 years old, I found it very disturbing, and I found it very believable. So many of the details that she recounted. Maybe Roy Moore is right. Maybe this is the most orchestrated fake news attack that I've ever seen. But if it is true, it is absolutely disgusting, and he belongs in the Democratic Party if what was alleged is true.
Vince, your thoughts?
I think that anybody accused of something like this deserves the right, first of all, to mount a defense.
Absolutely.
This is America. You have a right to defend yourself. We now know that he's talking defamation suits. That will be useful in terms of finding out in public what happened if they can go to discovery, but not in time for an election. So I think both the Republican Party and Roy Moore need to reckon very quickly with what the next steps are.
Is it peculiar to you that, well, first of all, I think that the point about innocent until proved otherwise should still hold in our even our modern culture. But does it strike you as, well, passing strange, if I may use the expression, in pertaining to a Senate seat in Alabama, that it's coming at this juncture in the campaign, and this is a man who's run for office numerous times, has been in the public eye in Alabama forever, and suddenly the Post finds 4 folks.
Well, it's funny. I would have actually been even more suspicious of it if it had happened before the Republican primary. And I don't know why that is. I'm just, that just was my gut.
That's your personal preference.
Yeah.
The dirt should come during the primaries.
But when you get down there and you read the woman's explanations for why she didn't come out before now, and her, like I said, her descriptions of the details of things, I found it chillingly believable. Vince, you and Vince are of course exactly right. He should, if he wants to defend himself, I believe that everybody is innocent until proved guilty. But it just seems strange to me why this woman would, under her real name, would come out and draw this level of scrutiny to her own life. And she's apparently not a political hack of any sort. No. But very sad stuff. Very, very ugly and sad stuff.
Charlie Hurt, Vince Colonnese, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you believe the Republican Party deserves to keep its majorities in the House and the Senate? We'd like to hear from you. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And now, please roll the video and watch as this base jumper, there he goes, 1, 2, leaps off a massive wall in Italy, completing 8 full rotations during his descent, twisting, flipping, turning his body. You've always got to come up with somebody who can do it better, and there he is. My goodness, that's amazing. Landing, obviously, safely, because he's doing it a second time, on video at least. Up next, small businesses now on board with House Republicans and their tax plan. The Senate planning to delay corporate tax cuts for a year. Ken Blackwell will join us to discuss whether Congress will be able to deliver on tax cuts in the House, the Senate, and put them before a president who will sign it all. Next. Joining us tonight, Ken Blackwell, former Ohio State Treasurer, a policy advisor to President Trump's transition team. And it's great to see you, Ken. Thanks for being here. Let's start out with the politics.
Good to be with you.
You talk about, you know a lot about taxes. But we're talking about politics here. This is a peculiar arrangement that our Senate and our House Finance Committee and Ways and Means Committees have come up with. What do you make of it? Is it defiance of Trump, or is it just the best they could do or the worst they could do?
Well, for the life of me, I don't know why they stay locked into these arcane rules that handcuff them when, in fact, they know that now it's a pregnant moment for something big to happen in terms of accelerating economic growth and the uplift in incomes for our families and workers across the country. Why they handcuff themselves is confusing to me, and I can't even begin to try to explain it. Yeah. But I do know this, Lou, they have to get something done. What they said down here, out here in the Midwest, get it done, buddy, get it done. That's what they have to do. They have to get it done. They can't excuse this anymore.
Are you amongst those who believe that if the House and the Senate fail this time to deliver to the president a legislative agenda, major legislative agenda item, tax reform, that probably at least the House will lose its majority?
That could very well happen. Look, they stumbled and bumbled and blew the opportunity on Obamacare. If now they miss an opportunity to give us a historic tax cut that not only gives us economic growth, but begins to do something with a statistic that we looked at during the campaign, and that is labor participation. We need to drive that labor participation rate up, and we need to get income lift for working families across this country. That's what the president wants to do. And Lou, as you and I have talked about before, we have $2 trillion or more parked offshore. We need to create an environment that brings that capital back home to fuel the economic growth and prosperity, in a historic way.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very tough proposition, because then we have to also incentivize those companies to invest that money in this country, rather than declare special dividends and buy back stock, as they did the last time it was tried under the Bush administration. Ken Blackwell, it's great to see you, as always. Appreciate it.
Always good to be with you, Lou.
Thank you. Senate Republican swamp creatures tackling tax reform, breaking with the president. We take it up with Jason Chaffetz. That's right, he used to be in that swamp. We'll ask him how it feels to be out of that swamp, and more. Stay ahead. Welcome back. In our online poll last night, we asked you, do you believe Tuesday night's election results are a final sign to the establishment rhinos to get behind the Trump agenda or get the heck out of the way? 84% of you say yes. Joining us tonight, former Republican Congressman of Utah, Fox Business contributor Jason Chaffetz. It's great to have you with us, Jason. And how does it feel?
Good to be with you, Lou.
How does it feel to be out of the swamp?
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I can't even tell you. And to not have to raise money, oh, even better.
Well, I would hope that would be the case. And as you watch your former colleagues in the House produce a tax bill, your thoughts on it and its quality and likelihood of being passed by the House?
Well, look, if the Democrats, if Nancy Pelosi was the speaker, we'd be talking about tax increases. So the fact that we're talking about a tax reduction, I am very frustrated in the timing of this. I think they should have been on the same page back in January. I'm disappointed in the Republicans passing a $47 trillion 10-year budget with essentially no cuts. I thought we were the party of fiscal discipline, and when you don't get any Democrats to come along, why don't we do Republican things? I think we're terribly uncoordinated in the launch of the Senate introducing its tax package at almost to the hour of when Kevin Brady is doing something as a huge milestone, and that is passing out an important tax reform package out of Ways and Means, only to have the Senate say, well, it's dead on arrival. We're not going to do anything with that.
Yeah, and the Senate is at the to be the most generous, is a little obstreperous under Mitch McConnell. He seems obstructionist more often than he is opportunistic in those opportunities to help the president. How overstated is his defiance, if you will, of President Trump, in your judgment?
Well, look, Orrin Hatch is the chairman of the committee. I mean, he's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee in charge of passing the health care bill, which they never came out of their committee, and also tax reform. I don't understand why we're pulling up on Thanksgiving and we're just now rolling this out, and the corporate tax. When I heard Donald Trump, I thought when he said, make America great again, we were going to do that right now, not a few years from now. I don't understand why moving the corporate tax a few years from now, that's ridiculous. Yeah. I don't understand that.
And why is there no embarrassment on the part of these good folks on Capitol Hill? The suggestion of a year from now, as if that's some sort of clever maneuver, or just esoteric, if you will, a moment of artfulness on their part. I mean, it is silly.
Well, they claim what they have to do is live under the rules of reconciliation. But they're the same body that created the rules of reconciliation. They're the ones that set the $1.5 trillion level. And so why didn't you, look, when I was in the room, when I was in the chairman of the Oversight Committee, it was back in November or December, and the leadership came to us and said, guess what, fellas, we're going to work hard. We're going to have that repeal and replace on the president's desk when he gets sworn in. And by about St. Patrick's Day or so, we're going to have that tax bill ready to go. I still don't understand why it takes this long. And I do believe they'll pass the tax bill out of the House, but by a razor-thin margin. I'm talking a person or two, because the people in the Northeast, they're just not going to do it.
Very quickly, we've got about a minute here, but I want to take this up as a former committee chairman yourself. We're watching all of these committees and the Russian collusion investigation producing nothing. Nothing's been produced since going back to Fast and Furious as a result of a congressional investigation. Why in the world, in your judgment, is it so difficult for a Republican Congress and Senate to do the right thing, get Mueller out as special counsel, get these idiotic investigations that have been underway for over a year and a half, including that of the FBI, to wrap it up?
Well, you're going to have on Tuesday the attorney generals appearing before the House Judiciary. Democrats will ask Russia, 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 but Republicans, that's precisely the question that they're going to ask. Everything from Fast and Furious, the IRS, Lois Lerner, the Hillary Clinton emails, special prosecutor, all of that.
All right. Jason Chaffetz, great to see you. Thanks so much. And that's it for us tonight. We thank you for being with us. Good night from New York.